Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm the ever more curious about cards, Ted Bannock.
Oh, Ted.
We have a very curious show for you today, don't we?
It is curious. And Grant is off doing whatever Grant does when he's not here.
He does what hobbits do sometimes.
He's
exploring.
He's off exploring.
That right. Curiosity gets the better of him too.
Right.
So we got a great show.
We do have a great show. So before we get talking about today's card, I just want to remind everybody that if you want to become a patron, the Patreon money goes into swag. The deadline for this year's swag has passed for sure, but you can help us keep the blog up, keep the hosting fees going. So that's over at patreon.com/cardtalk2018. And then, we do have a blog that keeps pace with the podcast. So if you are interested in written reviews, go to cardtalk2018.com. Over there you'll find all sorts of good stuff, and I'm actually releasing my theatrical campaign over there, and that's where the inspiration for a lot of these cards were. Grant came up with the idea of finishing off the cards that were in the Bonda Saga ship deck that I created that are part of the part of the deck that I was running, or was the deck that series. I was. Yeah, so it's all cross promotion right now, right, Ted? So
that's right.
We're just
self promotion. Check out our blog.
Yeah, check out the blog. Check out the theatrical campaign. Become a patron. Do all that good stuff. But Ted, I'm curious, what's the card that we're going to be talking about today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about Curious Brandybuck. From the 5th cycle, he is from the Wastes of Eridor pack.
Ooh. I thought he was from earlier on. I may have even said it when I was playing the theatrical campaign. I could have thought that this guy was a corset card, but I remember, like, now that we're doing the show, I'm like, of course there's only one Hobbit in the corset, right? The Keen-Eyed Took.
The Wandering Took.
But
Keen-Eyed Took is the leadership one that came out in the first cycle.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah. Anyways, this is what happens when you come in late to the game. So, who's the Curious Brandybuck?
So he's a spirit ally. He costs 2. He's got 2 willpower, 0 attack, 0 defense, and 2 hit points. He's got the keyword Hobbit, and he has the following text. Forced. After the active location is explored, place Curious Brandybuck on the bottom of its owner's deck. And below that, he has a response that says, after you travel to a location, put Curious Brandybuck into play from your hand under any player's control.
I like this guy.
Tell me why.
Oh, Ted, that was great. I love that you asked me that question. It's so very rare that I get questions asked of me in this show. Well, first of all, he's a Hobbit, so anything that boosts Hobbits, this guy is like Build a Pony and, Hobbit.
The Red Book.
The Red Book of Westmarch. Yeah, like things that... I was going to say Hobbit Cloak, but I don't think you're going to put Hobbit Cloak on this guy anyways.
What a terrible play.
It would be a horrible play, but I was just thinking of Hobbit specific cards, not there. But the fact that you can cheat him in for free after you travel to a location, what it does is it gives you an extra character that you may or may not have been relying on, and if all else, what it does is it gives you 2 more willpower for the following turn, right? Because you've already quested, and now you're in the travel phase, which is after the quest phase. So, at least it gives you 2 more willpower for the following turn, or any other subsequent turn where you haven't traveled to a location. And so that's great. And there has been several times where cheating him into play after you travel, and now you have a ready chump blocker, is also a feel-good moment, because I don't have a problem getting rid of this guy because he costs nothing to put into play.
He's a bit too curious for his own good, is he, David?
That's right. And so, I don't think his forced effect to get put on the bottom is anything. I mean, yes, it's nice that you can then shuffle your deck whenever you're searching for stuff, whatever cards you have to search for things, and then you shuffle your deck and Curious Brandybuck could come back into play. But, while that's nice, I don't think that ever plays a role in my reason for keeping him in a deck. I could just as easily put him in my discard pile. I mean, do you know what I mean? So that forced effect is nice that he gets put back in your deck. And, if you're searching for if you bring out Timely Aid and you do five cards, and, which you could be playing Timely Aid, it's a secrecy card, and now you have to shuffle your deck after you do the Timely Aid thing, so that's fine. That's nice. But I think that the fact that you put Curious Brandybuck into play from your hand for free under anybody's control. Now I'm mainly a solo player. So when I put him on my side of the board, like when I put him down, it's usually under my control because I'm playing solo. But I could see a case where you could,
if someone
I could
needs
give
a
it to
chump blocker,
somebody
right?
needs a chump blocker, or somebody needs to quest successfully for some, there would be no reason necessarily for. There may be some niche cases or some corner cases where somebody else would want a quester for some reason.
Yeah. So, for example, if you are let's say ally Faramir's on the table,
right,
where you pick a player and all that player's characters get their willpower boosted by exhausting Faramir, you might want to give this character to somebody who already has the most questing characters for the next turn.
Right.
So there's plenty of reasons to. Yeah, that makes sense to give it to another player.
Yeah, but I think that,
most often you're selfish. I got it.
Yes, I just don't think we're going to, do this. And so I don't know.
Yeah,
the Red Book is a global boost too. So if you give the other person the Curious Brandybuck, then it can. And you have the Red Book out, you can still use the Red Book on that. And so and that's the interesting part is you get, it seems like the Curious Brandybuck comes out at the best, you can hold it back. You don't all responses are optional, right? And so you can hold it back if you want, if you're there's not really any locations coming out, and there's, this really may not be the time where I'm going to need something, but I know, coming up, maybe the next quest card or, the next round or something, you're predicting it to be a little more challenging. You can hold him back too. And push comes to shove, if you have a ton of spirit resources, you can just pay for them. I would.
Have you done that?
Very rarely. I may have done it once, but like I said, there may be a reason why you would need, something happened in combat.
I guess,
right? And you may have you didn't travel, and you're like, oh, I'm going to need to be able to get over. I need 2 extra willpower. I don't know. There could be a corner case.
There could be corner cases if you are not coming across locations and you need the willpower that turn to push through other threat in the staging area, to push through. I could see it. I could see it happen.
But I don't think that's
not all.
play.
No, his main mechanic is you get to play him for free. You get to play him for free, and he most likely is only sticking around for 1 turn unless you happen to not get active locations for a series of turns. If you just don't get locations, or you could choose not to travel or something like that. But most of the time, his application is you travel, put him into play for free, and then he goes away when you explore the active location.
Right. I mean, so I also think that this guy doesn't necessarily have to go into a Hobbit deck.
Absolutely not.
And I think that that's also one of the benefits of this card. You know, you get two willpower in Spirit for free. You know, Spirit's pretty generous with the willpower anyways, but 2 for free is pretty good. You know, basically, the Curious Brandybuck is an event that sticks around for a turn.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. He reminds me in a sense of the escort from Edoras.
Yep.
Which is the 2-cost ally that has 2 willpower, and then when you quest, it gets an additional 2, so it quests for 4. But then after you, I think it's just after he, like,
right.
I forgot how he's
quest,
worded.
He gets
so after you quest,
discarded. Right.
He's discarded.
Right.
So
and it's not even a response.
Mechanic.
You know, it's not even a response. You have to get rid of it. You have
right.
to get rid of the escort, just like you have to get rid of the Brandybuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, did I steal your thunder there?
No. I was gonna say, I put him in usually he doesn't make the cut in a deck where I'm focused around Hobbits because he doesn't stay in play. Right. And I actually I play him most of the time with a hero that came out in the same cycle, which is Aristotle. I find him to be really, really great in Aristotle decks because you are discarding your hand with Aristotle at the end of every single turn.
Right.
And so this is a card you can essentially play for free. Right. And then it carries over to the next turn instead of just being some other card that maybe you can't afford.
And it also goes back into your deck, and Aristotle decks typically you can deck them much easier than you can in a regular
like you
deck.
might actually see this same Brandybuck again in an Aristotle deck.
Sure.
Depending on how much other card draw you have and how big it is. Like it's possible with Aristotle.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely I think that I think it's a good card, and I also think it's a fun card. And, you know, like, this card made the cut for my Bonda Saga ship because it was free. Because
that says a lot, because in Bond of Friendship contract decks, you only have 10 card slots per sphere, and then 10 for neutral or fellowship or other. So the fact that it's taking up to 1 or 2 of your 10 cards is a lot.
Yeah, and the reason why is because you can put it in for free and you don't need to spend the resources on it, right? So, like, I can have a Test of Will in my hand, put this guy out for free, and still have the money left for Test of Will. That's really what it's about, you know, saving the spirit resources while having some spirit allies to play, you know, and especially with that Bonda Saga ship deck, especially with the fellowship, especially with the Bond of Friendship contract, you know, you have all 4 different spheres, so you're not generating a lot of different, you know, you can't have 2 spirit heroes to generate a lot of spirit resources. So you have to be more mindful of your cost curve. So this guy helps with that, is really what I'm getting at.
Yep.
So, you know, and then it's not to be understated that this guy can absorb an archery. He can chump block if you need it. Like, there's just a lot of reasons that this guy can come out into play and help you.
He could even absorb 2 archery. Like, you could travel, play him for free, kill him with archery if you have to, and then that's fine because he was gonna go away next turn anyway.
Right.
So,
or if you have Build Pony, he has 3 hit points, and you don't have to, like, you know, like, there's a lot of things to do with this guy.
Yeah. I agree. I'll actually just make some honorable mentions if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
So you mentioned he does fit great into Hobbit decks, but like I said, outside of Hobbit decks, he's great. He's great in Airstore. He's an ally that automatically leaves play, which has lots of card combos in the game. One being the Valiant Sacrifice leadership card. Ally leaves play. its controller draws 2 cards. So you could even give Curious Brandybuck to another player, and then when it leaves play, like they could draw 2 cards because they controlled him.
Right.
He works great with leadership hero Prince Imrahil. That'll trigger his ability. So you'll quest, he'll leave play, and if you quest with Imrahil will be ready for combat, and you paid nothing for that. He just left play.
Right.
There's a couple other cards for leave play.
Aomer.
But Aomer.
Aomer, Tactics Aomer.
Aomer.
Give him a +2 for
not
the round that he comes into play, but the next round when you've explored the next active location.
A lot of Rohan decks are Tactics and Spirit anyway.
Right.
So for being a non-Rohan hero, or excuse me, a non-Rohan ally, like you should have 3 of these in every deck if you're playing Aomer and Spirit.
Right.
Like Rohan decks. Like he's as much Rohan as he is a Hobbit.
Right. Yeah.
So tons of other applications.
He's the most Rohaniest Hobbit
that there is.
Maybe he's the least Hobbity Rohan character.
Yeah.
Most Rohan Hobbit.
Yeah, I don't think I've done the Imrahil thing with him.
Of course.
But I haven't actually played him with Tactics Aomer. I didn't actually think of that, and I'm like, oh, that fits so well.
Yeah.
So a lot. He's a kind of a utility card in that sense, and I think he's overlooked. I think he's one of those underrated cards because you're like, oh, he comes into play and then he leaves right away, but you can combo him with a lot of other things, including like we just mentioned heroes, which are going to be guaranteed in play. Or well, not guaranteed because they could die or whatever, but like that you have a combo as soon as you draw it.
Right. Yeah, and I think not to be understated was that when you're playing, with the exception of a mono spirit deck, there's not a lot of space in a spirit, in a spirit and something else deck.
He also, oh my gosh. Hold on.
Did you just come up with something?
I just came up with something.
Oh, Ted's going to be building decks tonight. This is why we do the show, right?
This is why we do the show. So the card I'm looking up that I'm actually reading is Horn of the Mark, because Horn of the Mark is a spirit card. It says attached to a Rohan hero or Mary.
Yep.
And the response is after a character leaves play, if that character shares at least one trait with the attached hero, exalts Horn of the Mark to draw a card. So
there it is.
You would get to draw Mary shares Hobbit with this character, so you'd get to draw the card from Horn of the Mark.
And there's Spirit Mary, and
all that's
check
in
out
Spirit
Mary's show, but like Spirit Mary is great in a Rohan deck, right? Because Rohan is, high threat usually, and you can get some threat reduction and things like that. So
yeah, that's interesting. That I didn't realize that it kind of combos with Horn and Mark to that regard if you're playing it on Mary.
In the back of my head, I had horns, and not Horn of the Mark. Like I knew that there was a horn card, and I was like, So, and I was like, so close. But Horn of the Mark is the one that's going to benefit you here. But you cheat him into play for free. That's a great way. Also, we talked about build a pony. You can also go with the very good tail.
Yeah.
Like, coupled with maybe a sneak attack Gandalf or something, because he comes into play and then you can ready, I don't know, like there's all sorts, maybe not a sneak attack Gandalf, but a Gandalf that at the very end of the round in the refresh phase, Gandalf will ready and you can use very good tail. And I don't know, there's stuff.
No, he's a great target for very good tail because he's an ally you paid 0 for, but he has a printed cost of 2 for a very good tail. So you exhaust another 2-cost ally, maybe build opponent you also played for. So you played 2 allies that cost 2 for nothing.
Right.
And then you got 4 resources worth of ally out of them.
Mm-hmm. Even if you just get 1 ally,
So you paid nothing for that whole transaction.
Right. Except for the discarding of the 5
Yeah,
of whatever cards didn't come into play.
Right. Yeah. Or maybe you didn't use Build a Pony, use some other 2-cost ally.
Well, think about this. So in that Bond of Saga, I don't have very good tail in the Bond of Saga ship deck, but I have several 4 cards. Like, imagine if you turned Build a Pony and Curious Brandybuck, who both cost 0, into a Treebeard, which costs 4.
Right.
Like
that's
is that worth it? Is that worth it? 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Even just to pull 2 more allies out of the deck.
Right.
So again, there's so many things you can do with this card.
Yeah.
That I feel like I don't see him, in like events and things like that.
I think he's very underrated, like you said.
Yeah, I think he might have to go in my maybe next con type or online multiplayer deck or something. But I almost always include two, sometimes 3 in a lot of my Aristotle decks.
Right.
Even if there's some archetype that Aristote's doing, because I'm like, well, I'm just gonna play him for nothing, and next turn I get 2 free willpower.
So like, great.
Seems okay.
Seems okay.
So there you go. There's probably a few things that David and I missed. We just
I'm actually
looking
up something right now to see.
If
yeah.
Perhaps something on a certain website that involves deck building.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to do that.
Nope. Okay, I was seeing if there's any interaction with Lothiriel. I don't play Lothiriel that very, very often, and so I forget if Lothiriel was when it enters play or comes into play or how the trait sharing works. So I wanted to make sure that because I know that she's good in a lot of Rohan decks with Aomer too. So I was just double checking. So, but not as good. No interaction there. I think it's worth saying, but not dwelling on that, because this guy is temporary, for any new players out there, there's no reason to put any sort of attachments or anything on him because you're just going to lose them unless it's, something very, very, very corner case that, like you'll want the global boost that maybe the Hobbits can give to the Curious Brandybuck, but there would be no reason to like Squire's Helm or Hobbit Cloak or like any of that stuff, right?
Yeah, he's actually. I typed him into RingsDB to see how many decks he appears in, and I thought I was going to get like no hits, but there's actually like several decks that he appears in, okay. Almost like 15 pages. So there are actually several players out there that see his value, which is great.
That's great. What about, moving away from this? Let me also say that because you put them into play, you don't need the resource match, right?
That actually is a great question, and
because it's a response. It says put into play. Put into play means you don't need a resource match. It's like you're using like an elf stone, which doesn't require a resource match. It doesn't say play from your hand.
Put Curious Brandybuck into play from your hand under any player's control. So I'm inclined to agree with you because you're not reducing his cost to 0. Right. You're following his response.
Right. So, and it's the put into play, right? It's like sneak attack. You can sneak attack anything you want into play.
Right.
So,
same thing with Vilya, right? Vilya,
right,
you put in play regardless of its sphere.
It's not play from your hand. Play from your hand means to pay and put it down.
I did not realize that, which means you don't even need spirit access. You could have a mono tactics deck with Imrahil, or excuse me,
right,
with Aomer, right, and you can actually just put him in all Imrahil decks and all Aomer decks,
right,
every time,
anytime.
You don't even need spirit access. You are 100%, unless you actually want a hard cast, in which there's, as we discussed, very little reason to actually ever do that.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, unless you're desperate. You're probably going to lose the game anyways if you're so desperate that you have to play a Curious Brandybuck. But
right.
Yeah. So to shift gears a little, what about the card representation from the lore? I mean, I know that it's hard to talk about how this card is,
Generic.
represents. Yeah, it's just a generic card. It's not unique. It's a little easier when it's a unique card or something. But I mean, I think it represents the curiosity that some hobbits have. Some hobbits are not curious at all, right? Like most of the hobbits, but there's that wild line of hobbits that do stuff, right? And it's funny because in the literature, that's always like the Took. They talk about the Took side of Bilbo that takes him on the adventure, and the Took, so not that this is the adventurous Brandybuck, but a lot of hobbits are. It's funny because I just reread the first couple of pages in the whole intro to the Lord of the Rings, and they talk about hobbits, and like hobbits are just kind of simple folk, and so they don't have a ton of curiosity. They just kind of farm and eat and drink and smoke pipeweed. And so for a hobbit to be curious is kind of a bizarre trait, and so it's usually the Tooks that get the So this is the curious Brandybuck, and so. That's Mary's side of the family tree. So it's, to me, it's a little bit disjointed, but not, I guess any hobbit can be curious, but and I think that the response and the forced effect play into that curiosity. Like, hey, I'm curious, I'm going to see what's going on, and then I'm ducking away, I'm out. I can come back later and see what's going on, but. So I don't know how you feel about it, Ted, but that's how I kind of interpret it.
Yeah, he just represents, I think, that aspect of the hobbits, where the Tooks and some of the Brandybooks are more curious than they should be, so they're exploring.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, I absolutely agree.
And what about the artwork?
Yeah, I was just taking a look at that. I do like his artwork because it looks like he's in a town. It looks like he's probably in Bree, which makes sense because there are hobbits that do travel to Bree, the more curious of them, and some of them stay business or live closer to Bree. Looks like he's like, peeking around the corner at something he shouldn't be. Right. So
for a long time when I saw this, I thought that this was that he was looking into a window looking for like some food or something. Like and so I thought that the window was lit up. So I don't know. It was just kind of an interesting thing. And then when you look at the art, you realize that it's a corner and he's looking around the corner to see if it's clear, see if he can go do whatever he wants to do there. So
yeah.
But I think it's good art. It's not phenomenal. And I've said it a lot of times that, in a game full of phenomenal art, when you have just art that's really good, it's it can be, kind of, I don't know, like how do you compare to some of the other pieces? So this is fine art. It represents the card well enough, but I don't think that it's blow me away sort of art.
Sure. I actually really like the sort of old English style that we see how Bree is represented in a lot of artwork and in the films. I really like that style, and I get to see some more of it here, so I'm kind of drawn to that aspect of it.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely good.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, I guess we should ring this guy.
Yeah, let's ring him up.
Yep. And so for anybody who doesn't know or maybe new to the show, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we ring a card on a scale from 1 to 10. And 1, if we ring a card at 1, that's the best card in the game or the one card to rule them all. If we ring a card at 10, that's the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made. So Ted, where are you going to put the curious Brandybuck?
I want to give him Man, like, because I discovered all these new things with him, even just talking about him, makes me want to increase his rating to where he probably shouldn't be. So I think I'm just gonna give him a middle of the road 5. And I know I tend to rate a lot of cards that way. Um, it's because he's a utility type card in a sense, that he has all those combos that we just discussed. Right, he combos with several heroes and leaf play card effects and very good tail, and that has a lot of strength to it. And like I said, I think can get overlooked at times. But he's not going to. He's going to help all those characters, but he's not gonna break anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to be a little more generous than you, but not much. Again, when I look at a card, I think, hey, does this card inspire me? And everybody knows that I love Hobbits. Everybody knows that, that I lean toward Hobbits. But, I have to give this card a 4 because it's a Hobbit card, yes, but, it's versatility. And when I see this card, I'm like, oh, let me try here. And, again, just talking with Ted, I'm a little inspired to go try to, rework my, Amber Eagle deck and put Curious Brandybucks in it. Like it just seems like something fun. Like, so this card kind of inspires me in a way, like how many different places can I put this? So with that, I will give it a 4. So there you have it. That's the Curious Brandybuck. And you know what? We will see you again next week as we talk about more cards in the game. Don't forget to check out our Patreon and the blog in your free time. So everybody, have a great day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.